It is Monday, July 1st, 2019. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was very educational and humiliating. Get your ass kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Monday. I couldn't bring it together, man. I had other shit on my brain. I don't know what my excuse was. I don't know that there was an excuse. I just got kind of stomped today. It happens. Sometimes you're the lawnmower, and then sometimes you're the grass. These things they just happen. And I guess I should have kind of known to begin with that it was going to be that kind of day, only because we were starting off, and the instruction was any kind of escape from the closed guard that we wanted to do, but to do it repetitiously. And I like reps. Anyway, so we started off, and I don't know why, but instinctually I wanted to put my elbow on my opponent's knees and force them down. And this is actually from a knee position, and it's not actually very effective from there. You actually want to stand up first. But like I said, I didn't have it together in my dome. I don't know why, but it wasn't connected. And so I did settle on one escape though, and it gave me a good opportunity to work it several times. And I think even with resistance, the guard break that I was doing would be quite effective. And it's basically, and I had my instructor like right over my shoulder watching me, and this is why he kind of corrected me. He's like, dude, you're not gonna get out of that. Maybe if Pee Wee Herman is your opponent, you might want to get out of it that way, but not against a blue belt or anybody that's got any skill. You're not going to escape that way. And he's right. I couldn't escape that way. I needed to lean back first and then put my elbows on the knees. But even then, it wasn't as dominant and I guess positive. It was almost the credit card swiper kind of guard break. But I did a minor modification on it where I took my upper arm and I had it kind of upside down, turned thumb down, and I gripped both of my opponent's lapels that way, and then underneath, just with my thumb up, on the hand underneath it, and then just pushing straight and getting up on my feet, getting my leg behind the hamstring as opposed to the buttock, and leaning forward a little bit. And that pushes the knee far enough forward for you to get the elbow around the back of the leg there and kind of shoulder it off. So that was the one that I settled on, and I went for it and went for it and went for it and went for it, and it seems like that'll be a pretty dominant guard break for me. If I can ever get to where I'm more aggressive than defensive, I swear, man. It's like my only instincts at this moment when I'm rolling still to this day is primarily just survival. And so I rolled against a brown belt today, a very high level brown belt. I could swear they made him a black belt, but I guess not yet. Anyway, he's really, really good. And he had me huffing and puffing, but I almost got him. I almost got him at the end. He ended up getting me in a really interesting triangle. But I had switched it around to where he wasn't on top of me anymore, and it was a position where I was in his guard, and he managed to wing it around to a triangle setup. And so I took the other hand and I grabbed his lapel and I pulled it across his neck, and I heard him gurgle just a teeny tiny bit before he straightened his legs out. And I think if I had squared my legs up a little bit differently, he wouldn't have been able to clamp as hard around my neck, for one thing, and I would have been able to get further around to his side and finish off the choke with that lapel. But I mean, dude, I got it really, really fucking close. But no, he pushed back on the one leg across my shoulder there and opened me up a little bit further. Actually, the one across my chest. He pushed with his hamstring a little bit and managed to sink in that triangle really, really tight, so I had no choice but to tap. It happens, you know? Taps happen. And the instructor was talking a little bit about taps, and you know, I'm in full agreement with him that taps are wonderful. Because what a tap does is it shows you a chink in your fucking game, a weakness in your defense, that you should probably work on, that doesn't end in a really, really tragic result. You know, it gives you the opportunity to save your arm before you encounter an opponent that can really just wrench back on you and isn't going to give a fuck about your taps. You know, out on the street, they're not going to let go of your arm just because you're tapping. So, you know, it's good to find that issue in your game now where you actually have an opportunity to tap and save your motherfucking arm or your neck or your whatever before they close it off and just terminate its positive use forever. You know, I mean, come on now. You know, it's a freebie. What's not to like about that? It's like, oh shit, there's a big ass hole in my game. I better fix that. You know, I find myself in that position a lot, so I'm speaking from experience here. Taps are fucking good. I mean, for all my size and all my strength, man, I tell you what, my ego gets me in a position where I need to tap more often than I would really, really like to admit. And like I said, it's much better that it's happening there inside the gym, where I do have an opportunity to tap, and where my opponent will let go of my arm, will not wrench it back around my head or whatever. I mean, come on now. What's not to like about that? Because we all know, out there on the mat, and out there in real life are two different worlds. You know, that's all I'm saying here is that taps are good. They'll get you through that mental tick that makes you make that stupid fucking move every single time, because you get an opportunity to observe it. You know, I mean, because after you get it done to you that one time out there on the street, you're probably not going to be in a position to be doing that for another few months, because it's going to be in a fucking cast or some shit like that. Okay. Now, in the gym, you get 3 to 5 reps on that, and then maybe you figure out exactly what it is in your setup that you're doing that is allowing them to get you in this position. Like, he got me in that fucking triangle position twice, and I managed to get out of it once, but the second time he locked that bad boy in. And so I got to be thinking about something in the progression from where he first gets his legs around me to getting them up around my shoulder and under my arm to terminate that shit, because it's obviously like a really strong move for him, and he'll probably get me in it every single time until I figure it out. And it is with that, I'd like to go ahead and throw down into some music. And you know, we have not been doing our traditional first dance body count, so we're going to have to rectify that. And so here it is, the ski mask way, first dance, here on Coin Metal. And that was Static X with Machine. Yeah, I felt the need to go just 1 or 2 extra there with my kind of trend that I was working there. Anyway, so we do have plenty of tabs open in the browser today that we are going to review, because I feel it's necessary. You know, there's some good stuff going on out there. And this one, the first one I got here, we've seen this as a reoccurring theme. And I've said many times that I think countries like Zimbabwe and Venezuela and Greece and Portugal and Spain, that they would be the ones where we see the greatest amount of crypto adoption. And really, it's a matter of survival or prosperity. You know, there, as opposed to, you know, going down and you know, crashing really hard with the rest of the economy around them, that some Venezuelans and more as we go on will be investing in cryptocurrencies as a means to retain their monetary value in the face of an ever-slipping national currency. Now, I don't think this effect is contained to Venezuela. or these other countries that have had massive monetary debasements, Turkey and so on. I think that they are kind of symptomatic of where all fiat currency is going. That the trust engendered in these currencies, or at least given to these currencies, to be able to retain the value of our efforts long enough for us to prosper off of them, that window is getting ever smaller. Between additional regulations every year and additional taxations every year, and new ways to nick you every year, and of course the ever-growing volume of fiat currencies on the market. Between all of these effects, we see the monetary value that we have, that we earn, getting winnowed away right out from under us. Whereas in cryptocurrencies, we see that they appreciate versus these declining national fiat currencies. And so, when you're looking at the global market, you want to decide, do I want to maintain my monetary value in this system that is like crumbling and threatening to collapse on my head? Or do I try and look for some way to retain my monetary value until the economy around me catches up, or, just until I don't need it anymore? Really, there's not really too much choice that's necessary if you've already made that decision. I've been using crypto as money for probably about 6 years now, but I've been using it as my primary means of income for the last 3. Now, I'm not rich or anything, but I'm not sucking breadcrumbs off the carpet or anything to fill my stomach, So, there's, to me, the promise of cryptocurrencies in retaining your monetary value has been something that's proven. It's not conceptual for me. It's conceptual for a lot of people that are involved in cryptocurrencies, though, because they just talk. Some of you guys trade, but a lot of you guys, like on crypto Twitter, you just talk. You don't even own fucking Bitcoin. And I find that so sad, especially because I'm not exactly I'm not exactly the smartest guy in the world. I'm a little more intelligent than some, but I'm kind of a dummy, really. And so for me to understand it, it surprises and appalls me that more people haven't seen it. And I think that we are going to see another little spike up to another all-time high. And these people are going to finally understand that, hey, you know what? The rest of the world economy is kind of on fire right now, and this is not burning as quickly as everything else. As a matter of fact, it seems to be growing, so I want to retain my monetary value in it. However, Bitcoin isn't the only option, and it's not exactly the best option for all of us. I've commented multiple times on this show that I think the development path of trying to turn Bitcoin into the next Swift system is probably going to fail, number one, because it disrupts the entire incentive balance of Bitcoin. Basically the only way to try and retain it at this point is to go to bigger blocks. And I don't know, I've been singing that same song for about 4 or 5 years now, so it gets kind of tiring, being one of the only people continuing to say it. But I don't think that the cryptosphere is growing quite as quickly as we'd like, and I think that the institutional investment and interest in it is a lot higher and represents a lot more of the money that's being slushed around in the cryptosphere than most of us would like to admit. There are people that are smart enough to reach out there and get them some Bitcoin, but they are not the ones saying, "Oh yeah, high fees are great." They're the ones that are saying, "You know what? If the fees get high enough, it's going to turn my balance into dust." So, that's probably not a good idea. It just sickens me to see that some people are kind of cheering what's going on right now with regard to Bitcoin and the fees. in the backlogs on the mempool. Yeah, and it kind of saddens me because all of those people that are waiting for their confirmations, they've probably never experienced Bitcoin the way I have, where a simple QT wallet on a stupid fucking tablet circa 2012, I was sending money to my friends that were, smart enough to also download a wallet onto their tablet or their phone or whatever. And so, it's like, to me, when I look back at that, and I look back in the differential in the rhetoric that I was seeing online, it kind of saddens me, because back then it was always, dude, you got a laptop that's not doing anything right now? Fire that bad boy up and turn it into a miner. We were hearing back in like 2015, 2016 about kids that had mined with their laptops, lost the laptop since, and it's got a fucking wallet on it. And either they're scouring through the local dump trying to find it because they threw the thing away. They smoked it mining it. Or, they just stashed it away and they didn't do anything with it since then, And so it's like they're trying to rehabilitate the laptop just to recover the funds. And we've heard about people that, some kid, he had like 9,000 Bitcoin or some shit like that he had mined really, really, really early days on a fucking laptop. And he managed to hodl it until Bitcoin was worth something. And now he doesn't have to live on the streets anymore. And Bitcoin is one of the very, very few things, cryptocurrencies in general, are one of the very few things that I've seen legitimately, by legitimate means, elevate the lifestyles of otherwise poor people. And myself included in that. Anyway, so I got this article here. It's on Tribetica.com. Bitcoin, a better bet than bolivars as Venezuelan hyperinflation escalates. This is on, it was authored July 1st, 2019 by Remy V. Let's check and verify. Remy. Come on, Remy. Load up. Let's go. And of course, it does not give us any real attribution concerning this person. Summon a fish. I'm just going to say yes. Penis. Sorry, Remy, if I'm wrong. Continuing on. Bitcoin can be many things depending on the situation. For many, it's a store of value. For some, it is a trading vehicle. But for Venezuelans, BTC is the most reliable hedge against the rampant hyperinflation in the Latin nation is facing. Let's see here. New banknotes fresh off the press. The inflation has reached such epic proportions that the Banco Central de Venezuela has printed more new notes with a lot fewer zeros in them. According to an official statement last week, the government has printed new banknotes of 10,000, 20,000, and 50,000 bolivar denominations. Let's right-click that one. The release also added that the new bills are aimed to, quote, make the payment system more efficient and facilitate business transactions. According to one Venezuelan posing on Reddit, the new notes have already been devalued. Quote, government issued new bolivars banknotes, 10,000 BS, 20,000 BS, and 50,000 BS. 50,000 BS are around $8 US since the time they announced them, and the people get them at the banks as they have lost 10% of the value. This after 5 zeros were shaved from the currency less than a year ago, and 3 zeros more 12 years ago. So it would be, 5 trillion BS. Wow, that's some fucking devaluation, dude. During last year's monetary reform, the state announced the launch of a new denomination bolivar, which shaved 5 zeros off the national currency. The sovereign bolivar, or Bolivar Soberano, replace the superinflated strong Bolivar, Fuerte, VEF, which had itself replaced the original currency in 2008 when 3 zeros were chopped. President Maduro claimed that the new VES currency would be anchored by the oil-banked state-issued digital coin, the Petro. Economic conditions in Venezuela have continued to spiral out of control as political clashes escalate. According to the International Monetary Fund, inflation is expected to hit 10 million% this year. The Financial Times reports that the number of people fleeing the country could reach 8 million by the end of next year, making it the biggest recent exodus anywhere on the planet. When a state-manipulated currency decreases in value, people need to look elsewhere in order to survive. Bitcoin would be the savior in this instance, and according to CoinDance, more Venezuelans are turning towards it. Volumes have surged to all-time highs of over 45 billion in recent weeks, as Bitcoin surged to new highs for 15 months. Venezuelans are not the only ones looking towards Bitcoin as a hedge against economic oppression. It is also going on in Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey. People are slowly waking up to the mess that their governments are making and realizing that there is a viable and safe alternative in Bitcoin. Would you switch to Bitcoin over fiat? And your thoughts below. And let's see if anybody has commented. And no, comments are closed on this. Weird. Anyway, yeah, I've already switched primarily over to crypto. And I had like several years ago, so the question is kind of moot for me. And I imagine that there are plenty of Americans that also fall into the same category with me. And I expect that in the longer term we will be seen as pioneers and visionaries because we were that much further ahead of the curve. And I think also the regulatory efforts that are coming out, they're just too little too late. The fact is that if they had addressed us as they're trying to now back in like 2010, 2011, they might have had a chance. But at this point, I think they're going to be far more concerned with investing in it themselves because they don't want to fucking starve to death either. And that COLA adjustment only covers like the first week after they get it. And then after that, they're fucked again. Really. They're going to be trying to save their own fucking skin. And we've already seen this happening in Venezuela where police, when they were first trying to crack down on Bitcoin miners in Venezuela, the police were stealing the mining equipment and not turning it in. No. They were taking the shit home, setting it up there, and firing it up again. Because it wasn't technically quote-unquote illegal, but it was like sketchy enough that they could snatch your shit. But there again, what happened? The fucking officials set it up in their own homes and started mining again. We're going to see this over and over and over again. This is a new trend. We are going to hit this where, people will be moving into Bitcoin and they'll notice that, gosh, those transaction fees are really fucking high. And no, I don't want to do this Lightning Network bullshit. I don't want to go from one fucking custodian who abuses my trust right on over to another one. I want to take my money away from all those people. And I'm going to invest it in something else. I'm going to be trying to transact it in Litecoin or Verge or Monero or something fucking else. Something that, I'm not going to get completely raped on the transfer fees. Something that I do not need to set up my own ATM machine at home just to make sure that my balance stays with me. And even then can be ganked if there's somebody out there that really wants it. Come on now. I mean, really, we want to go to more security, not less. And eliminating trusted third parties is an important step in closing those those holes in your personal security, your personal financial security, as well as your personal information security as well. And let me get into this article here. This is a quick little announcement, but of course it's in Spanish or Venezuelan or whatever the fuck they speak in Venezuela. Let's do some translating. Translate the web page. I really do like this tool, man. It's like the lamest fucking looking website on the entire internet. Looks like it was made in like 1998, but it still works. So I'm not going to complain too much. We're translating. Come on. Come on. Oh, what? The page was not retrieved from its original location over a secure connection. What? Dismiss. Come on, do it. Do it! Yeah, it doesn't want to do it. Anyway, I can't read Spanish or Venezuelan or whatever, so we're going to avoid it. But yeah, I think that in the longer term, that is exactly what we're going to see in the more sophisticated markets. I mean, if we're already seeing it in China, I think the idea that we'll see it here in the U.S. is that much closer. You know, especially China and Russia. It's not going to take too long for all of the countries that have been embargoed and sanctioned by the United States to just get together and say, you know what? We don't really need to do business with those guys. We can do business with one another via cryptocurrencies and use those as our medium of exchange. We don't even have to make a new one. Some kid in Uzbekistan just created one. It fucking works just fine. Let's go ahead and transact in it. We only have to worry about its value during the time it takes to get from me to you and for you to cash it back out again. And if the network is solid, that shouldn't take all that long. You know, a couple minutes. 10 minutes at the outs. Nonetheless, it will get done, and it'll get done faster than if we relied on the SWIFT network to transfer it or some other third-party intermediary. And I think that's the power of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies that is... It's so awesome. I mean, you cannot imagine it if you're not doing it. You know, if you've never made a transfer to somebody in a fucking chat room where like you've done a rain and it's gotten to people in fucking Ireland and Australia and New Zealand and India, it's awesome. You cannot imagine it if you've not done it. You know, I think it was 40,000 or 50,000 Verge to somebody before the last time it spiked. And they lost it for a little bit, and they found it again. And that meant the difference between them living on the street and them having their own home. So when I hear somebody tell me about that, say, dude, you kept me off the street with this fucking tip that you gave me of this coin that was worth less than a fucking penny at the time that you gave it to me, turned into 25 cents and secured my economic future for a couple months at least. You know, covered the rent, put food in my mouth. I couldn't... Fuck, gods don't even do that shit. So, you know, the fact that I did it is a simple, you know, a tip. Hey, man, you got the answer. You know, here it is. You know, 40,000 Verge. Or however many it was. I know it was a lot. I mean, I gave away a shit ton of it. Somebody gave me a lot of it, and then I gave away like half of what I got, and then walked off with the rest, of course. But that's me. I didn't really walk away with all that much, to tell you the truth. By comparison to what I got, I think I had like 13 million of them at one time. I walked away with like 2.5 million, but I gave the rest away. I gave the rest away to pretty much everybody. And I think I gave like 500k to this guy, or 40k, or some decent amount of coin. And like I said, though, it made the difference between him not having any sunrises on his horizon to not having to live on the street. What's better than that? I've never heard of any kind of like a Red Cross or any organization like that has made that kind of difference in somebody's life. And again, just as an act of just, hey, dude, just see what I can do, and I sent that money thousands of miles away. Now imagine, say it just turned into like, say, $30,000, or maybe even $10,000, $10,000. That would cause enough trouble. If I tried to transport that physically to him, I probably would have been busted somewhere between here and there, because the guy lives on the East Coast. Either that, or I'd have to have somebody securely transfer it, or I would have to do a bank transfer, a wire, or something like that. That would have been pretty expensive. It certainly would have made it prohibitively expensive to do. I would have just enjoyed the coin myself. No, pardon me. But, at the same time, I did that thing, and it worked out really good for somebody else. Gotta love that. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down into some music. I got more on the tabs, but I think it's appropriate for a little bit of music. And as far as where to go, let's go with a little bit of Slipknot here. The Heretic Anthem here on Coin Metal. And that was Prong with Innocence Gone. Anyway, as far as what we're getting into next, I got this article here. It's on Forbes, or FT, or Financial Times rather. Is that Forbes? I don't know. Financial Times. Same diff, right? And let's see here. As far as who is this by? It's by Sam Fleming. It was authored yesterday. And so here it is. Currency Warrior. Why Trump is Weaponizing the Dollar. Businesses in countries such as Russia are testing the power of the reserve currency, but it could benefit from any global instability. In an industry long dominated by the dollar, it was a move that carried obvious symbolic weight. Last year, Russian diamond miner Alrosa tested a new system for selling its rocks in rubles to clients in countries such as China and India as an alternative to the U.S. currency. Since then, the company has conducted about 50 transactions under the mechanism using a range of currencies, says Yevgeny Argariev. My apologies there, sir. Alrosa's director of sales, who says avoiding the dollar conversion allows transactions to be conducted more speedily. Quote, the number and volume of these transactions is relatively small, but we think it is valuable for our clients to have a variety of options for settlement to choose from, he says in an email, adding that, quote, the world changes and we need to try to respond. Though under consideration for several years, the initiative by the partly state-owned miner is a sign of a growing appetite to find ways of shaking off the stranglehold the U.S. dollar has long held on global commerce and finance. Those efforts have been taken on high urgency given Donald Trump's increasingly aggressive use of U.S. economic and financial weaponry to get his way in foreign affairs. The president has thus far engaged in minimal military conflict, but he has proved an unusually pugnacious currency warrior as he pairs a tendency to talk down the dollar's value in his quest for a smaller trade deficit with an unusual willingness to use the currency's global heft as a tool of foreign policy. Critically, sanctions, which can block foreign officials or corporations from accessing vast swaths of dollar-denominated commerce and finance, are being deployed against Russia, Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, and a host of other countries, alongside tariffs and other transactions on key companies such as telecom manufacturer Huawei. As a result, economies including China and Russia are examining mechanisms to curtail their reliance on the dollar, while European capitals are seeking ways of circumventing America's new barriers on dealings with Iran. To date, the initiatives amount to less than a pinprick in the U.S. currency's hegemonic status, as understood by the modest scale of Al Rose's foreign exchange innovation. But Mr. Trump's unilateralist approach has unquestionably unleashed a phase of experimentation elsewhere, prompting some analysts to ask whether, in the long term, the U.S. dollar's supreme position in the global financial system could be shaken as other nations revolt against what they see as Mr. Trump's arbitrary use of American power. Adam M. Smith, a former Treasury and White House official who is now a partner at a law firm Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher, says the manner in which Mr. Trump is wielding America's economic power is unprecedented, as he uses sanctions, tariffs, trade negotiations, and export controls interchangeably. Quote, "He is using the importance and attractiveness of the U.S. market to the rest of the world as a coercive tool to get others to bend to his will," says Mr. Smith. Quote, "He does the very aggressive use of economic tools make it more urgent for countries to find ways to avoid the U.S. market? Probably. However, the urgency may not mean that most countries will be successful in finding effective workarounds." Yeah, whatever. America has long enjoyed a singular economic arsenal thanks to the ubiquity of the U.S. dollar and the centrality of its economy and financial system to global commerce. Although America's share of global gross domestic product may have declined, its currency still accounts for over 60% of international debt, according to a speech by European Central Bank official Benoit Courier, in February, and leads the euro both as a global payment currency and in foreign exchange turnover. It dominates pricing of commodities such as oil and metals and accounts for about 40% of cross-border financial transactions. The dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves has slipped in the 10 years since the financial crisis, but at 62% of the total, it still dwarfs all other rivals. The euro has lost greater ground over the same time, now standing at just over 20%. The Chinese renminbi is just a few percent of global reserves and a mere 2% of international payments, according to the global transfer network SWIFT. This unique place at the heart of the global economic system gives the U.S. government enormous power. Using the dollar almost invariably means touching a U.S. financial institution, says Iswar Prasad, a professor of economics at Cornell University. This immediately puts you within the reach of the U.S. government and regulators. The U.S. toolkit is particularly potent thanks to the use of, quote, secondary sanctions. Normal U.S. sanctions aim to prevent American citizens from dealing with a given country or party, but secondary measures allow the government to penalize third parties that do business with a sanctioned country. The consequences for non-U.S. institutions of failing to comply with U.S. rules can be severe. In 2014, for example, BNP Paribas was hit by a penalty of nearly $9 billion by the U.S. authorities in connection with sanction violations, as well as being forced to temporarily suspend part of its U.S. dollar clearing work. While Washington's use of sanctions has been on the rise for decades, Mr. Trump has emerged as a particular enthusiast. Data compiled by Gibson Dunn show 1,474 entries were subject to sanctions designations in 2018, 50% higher than in any previous year for which it has kept records. The power of these tools has been felt across markets. The Treasury's decision to sanction metal groups, Rusal and parent company EN Plus, led to a surge in aluminum prices before it agreed to ease its stance if its major shareholder, Oleg Deripaska, gave up control. Sanctions were lifted in January. Last August, Turkey was plunged into a currency crisis as the U.S. imposed swinging tariffs on its steel and aluminum exports on top of sanctions on senior ministers. The U.S. Congress has equally been aggressive in pushing sanctions. In April, a cross-party group of senators led by Republican Marco Rubio and Democrat Bob Menendez demanded sanctions against senior Chinese Communist Party officials in response to alleged human rights abuses against Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities in the northwest province of Xinjiang. This month, senators demanded more rigorous enforcement of U.S. regulations against Chinese companies that seek access to U.S. markets. Hawks such as Rubio want to take matters further and more closely examine China's ready access to U.S. finance. Quote, China poses the greatest long-term threat to U.S. national and economic security. At a minimum, American investors should be aware of where their money is going when it comes to Chinese investments, said Mr. Rubio. The Trump administration's aggressive use of sanctions carries multiple risks. It is not only rivals who are upset. The U.S. has, at times, been also incensed close allies for which decades have viewed Washington as a reliable steward of orderly global markets. In the longer term, it could accelerate a trend in which other countries wish to reduce their reliance on the dollar for its main three purposes: as a store of value, a unit of account, and a medium of global exchange. In the very long run, some specialists fear that the U.S. dollar's totemic status at the center of the global economy could be eroded or even supplanted, just as the British pound was by the dollar during the interwar period. Richard Nephew, a former U.S. government sanctions specialist who is now program director at Columbia University's Center on Global Energy Policy, says that for at least the next 5 to 10 years, the world is locked into the dollar as a default currency. But he argues there will be an evolution towards a system where the U.S. is not the sole significant trading currency. U.S. policy today will increase the speed with which that transition takes place. A recent report from the Center for New American Security think tank argues that a host of other factors could conspire to weaken the impact of America's economic policy arsenal over the longer term. Critically, it says if the U.S. attempts to reduce its economic, financial, and trading connections with key overseas economies, quote, over time, U.S. coercive economic leverage over those economies will diminish. Russia has been at the forefront of attempts to de-dollarize, spurred by the punishing impact of U.S. sanctions on its economy. Quote, we are not ditching the dollar is ditching us, Russia's President Vladimir Putin said late last year. Quote, the instability of dollar payments is creating a desire for many global economies to find alternative reserve currencies and create settlement systems independent of the dollar. Russia's central bank last spring sold $10 billion worth of dollars from its reserves, shifting the holdings into renminbi, euros, and yen, according to official data published in January with a 6-month delay. 15% of Russia's reserves were in the Chinese currency last summer, the data showed, 3 times the proportion at the end of the first quarter in 2018. For its part, China has experimented with denominating oil futures in its currency as well as working on its own international payment system. In June, Russia agreed with China at a summit between Xi Jinping and Mr. Putin to do more trade in their respective currencies. The ruble and renminbi share of Chinese imports into Russia edged up from 17% in 2017 to 24% in 2018, according to economist Dmitry Dolgin of ING. Yet for all of the political attention, the two countries' attempts to reduce the dollar's role remain in their infancy. For example, China and Russia set up a non-dollar direct settlement plan to help with their gas pipeline deals around 2015. However, in practice, the Chinese side uses it as little as possible, in part because of the risk of ruble volatility. China has also harbored aspirations to turn its Belt and Road Initiative into a platform for boosting the international use of the renminbi. But it would in practice have to be dramatically liberalize its capital controls to gain widespread acceptance as a reserve currency. In Europe, frustrations have been growing at the continent's faltering attempts to boost the euro's global role alongside the dollar. Top French officials, including Francois Villeroy de Gallau, governor of the Banque de France, have called for a greater use of the euro in international transactions in a bid to challenge the dollar's dominance. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker last year said it was a, quote, aberration that the EU paid for more than 80% of its energy imports in dollars, despite only 2% of imports coming from the US. Yet the pattern since the financial crisis has, if anything, been a decline in the euro's international role. Gita Gopinath, the IMF's chief economist, points to a reduction in euro invoicing and international financial transactions. The dollar, on the other hand, has gained relative to the euro in the last 10 years, she says. Meanwhile, progress on a high-profile mechanism backed by major European countries that aims to sustain trade with Iran, despite newly imposed U.S. sanctions, has been painfully slow. Sigal Mandelker, my apologies, the Treasury official in charge of enforcing sanctions, points out that despite European efforts to keep their businesses invested in Iran following Mr. Trump's withdrawal from the nuclear deal, the companies, quote, got out in droves. There are people out there who argue we have overused the tool, says Mr. Mandelker, but if you look at our objectives and how we are using the tool, you will see that what we have been doing systematically is to change behavior, to disrupt the flow of bad money, and to go after entities and individuals who pose national security and illicit finance risk. For all the warnings that the U.S. will undermine its own currency by being so aggressive, there is little sign of any diminished appetite for using the greenback. Kevin Hassett, the outgoing chairman of Mr. Trump's Council of Economic Advisors, says, if you thought that Trump's policies were imperiling the status of the dollar, then your case would be stronger if you showed that the dollar had collapsed a lot under Trump policies. But the move in the dollar has been kind of the opposite of that. Yeah, whatever. Ms. Gopinath is skeptical about the chances of near-term change. Quote, you are hearing more noise right now for other currencies to become truly global currencies, but the data do not show a more forceful dynamic in this direction, and it would take a lot more than what we're seeing now for there to be a switch. Indeed, the irony is that if the president ends up triggering global instability via his policies, investors may end up flocking all the more enthusiastically towards dollar assets. That was, after all, the phenomenon during the financial crisis when the mortgage meltdown that was made in the U.S. prompted global investors to scamper for the safety of government bonds. And it has been the same story recently as Mr. Trump's trade wars drove down U.S. bond yields. Quote, anything Trump creates to foment uncertainty and instability will only end up strengthening the dollar, says Mr. Prasad. Over time, other countries will indeed get tired of this and shift away from the dollar as a unit of account and medium of exchange, he adds, but in the foreseeable and longer future, the dollar's role as a dominant store of value is unlikely to be challenged. Yeah. Yes and no. Anyway, let's taste some of these comments here. Let's see. The first one is by Buddy. Given a choice, would you hold Russian rubles in your bank account for the next Amazon purchase? Probably not. Let's see here. Let's go with Sardonic. He says, we might as well call recent U.S.-China events what they are. The trade war is basically over. Currency warrior has caved in yet again. ZTE, Mexico, Canada, Hawaii, China got what it wanted. U.S. corporations got what they wanted. Furthermore, China has enough data points to know all currency warriors' bluffs. Talk in tweeter he will, but he won't go over the brink. Yeah. Gerby responded to that. Sardonic, shh. That is the genius of the man. He manages to get to the point to which any rational U.S. president would aspire, but still keep the Republicans on board. By threatening to smash a country and then agreeing to let them do what they were going to do anyway, the blustering threat makes him look like a statesman. Korea keeps its nukes, and Iran gets theirs. Mexico keeps its factories. The Paris Agreement is stronger than ever before. Unlike TR, who had a different hand to play in a different era. Speaking loudly and carrying a small stick. At the same time, he is raking in all the cash he can before the next recession and cheating on his taxes. That makes him smart. Yeah. Well, you know, I saw one down here that seemed kind of interesting too. Oh, let's see, where is it here? Something about marijuana. Where is it? Marijuana, where was it? Damn it, Jim. Maybe they deleted it that quickly. You know, I don't know. Oh, here we go. This is by Uno Mas. It says, any country can try and weaponize any resource. I am okay with that. What is unfair and relatively recent is the doctrine that if an economic transaction is done in U.S. dollars, then U.S. law applies. Marijuana is legal in Uruguay, but commerce is severely hampered because U.S. dollars can't be used for it, courtesy of U.S. war on drugs, even if marijuana is now legal in several U.S. states as well. And you know, the real irony of that is that U.S. dollars is the only way that you can actually transact for marijuana here. You can't actually use credit cards. You need U.S. dollars. You know? I find that to be really, really humorous, honestly. But anyway, got this next article, and I think this is probably closer to reality, and that if there is an exit from the U.S. dollar, that this will be more than likely how it materializes. And this is on ambcrypto.com. Bitcoin's decentralized nature will render military superiority, economic sanctions, irrelevant. And this is by Chayanika Deka. Let's check and verify that picture really quick. She. So no penis. Had to check and verify. This is authored approximately 5 hours ago on July 2nd, 2019. So way in the future. Continuing on. A lot has been debated about whether Bitcoin would eventually disrupt traditional systems or whether the latter would just embrace the technology. The decentralized ledger technology has undoubtedly garnered the attention of skeptics as industry giants are looking forward to revolutionizing the existing system by leveraging the underlying tech or jumping into the cryptocurrency economy or ecosystem directly. However, in a fresh take on Bitcoin's, quote, eventual domination, Pomp penned his utopia. In the latest edition of, quote, Off the Chain, Anthony Papliano, co-founder of Morgan Creek Capital, stated that Bitcoin would eventually shift the status quo in terms of power and dominance of a country over another. According to the crypto maximalist, Bitcoin is vying for, quote, global reserve currency status, something it'll never actually achieve. But anyway, continuing on. Pomp noted that the global reserve currency was always dominated by a global superpower at any given time in history, whether it is ancient Athens or more recently when the US dollar became the global reserve currency after World War II. Pomp is of the belief that this trend will change after the world realizes the largest cryptocurrency, Bitcoin's true potential. His blog read, quote, instead of conceiving a plan to gain superiority by attacking other countries or currency, Bitcoin is designed in a way to survive any known attack. The co-founder stated that military superiority will be rendered irrelevant in the face of the decentralized nature of Bitcoin. There is also no way to, quote, stop Bitcoin. Hence, the distributed network cannot be sanctioned, which will subsequently render an economic sanction irrelevant. Bitcoin would also defeat any cyber warfare tactics owing to the strength of the network that has risen 10 times in the past 2.5 years. This would lead to Bitcoin becoming the first currency to achieve the feat of becoming a global reserve peacefully without having to indulge in warfare. Yeah. And I think that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies will represent a different phase in economic competition. See, now each currency in the cryptosphere is open to every individual. So when you're looking at Bitcoin or Litecoin or any other, there are potentially 8 billion customers and users and miners out there that could be working on the network, could be writing code for the coin, or simply trading or transacting in the coin themselves. So when you look at it from that perspective, all of this national myopia, it goes away. It becomes irrelevant, as this article kind of indicates, because our currency and our transactions are no longer dependent upon the financial or monetary policies of any nation or bank, but rather the economic will of the entire planet. And by that scale, cryptocurrencies are way undervalued. And I don't care if we're talking about the teeniest, tiniest cryptocurrency out there. In reality, every national currency would be the Venezuelan bolivar versus Bitcoin. That's just the reality of the situation. And I think it's just a matter of time, though, before more individuals take it upon themselves to become part of these networks and transact in these currencies. But we are going to see it. I mean, it's as certain to me as tomorrow's sunrise. that in the wake, or in the, how should I say it, in the looming shadow of fiat market collapse, we have to do something to maintain some sort of economic activity. I mean, that's how we sell stuff. That's how we buy stuff. That's how we continue to live as relatively civilized individuals, or people, rather. You know. But that's another facet of economic collapses and transfers of power, such as we're seeing with cryptocurrencies and fiat currencies. That's one big difference that I think that we'll have. I think that the transition from one to the other will be relatively bloodless, as well as being marked by a lot less poverty and a lot less starvation and a lot less economic ruin than we have seen previously. And it's because these currencies travel from the ground up. You need home miners to invest their hard-earned dollars in hardware and be mining at home for it to get any traction anywhere else. That's where it gets its value from. That's where it gets its trust from. And so the idea of national cryptocurrencies, or even bank-issued cryptocurrencies, completely silly. You know, Facebook coin versus a coin that you can mine in the comfort of your own home? Give me a fucking break. GPU mining is going to be, I think it's going to be a lot more profitable over the next couple of years, specifically because of a shift in market share over to more altcoins. We haven't seen it in the extreme that I believe is going to happen in the future, but it is there. And I do believe that there are enough people that are actually interested in frictionless transnational commerce that in the longer term, that's exactly where we're going to see people migrate to. Anyways, with that, I'd like to throw back down into some music, and we have not played any Probot, so here it is, Red War, here on Coin Metal. And that was Metallica with Blackened. As far as where we're going next, got this article here, and this one came across my feed while I was in the little music break there. It's kind of funny how that happens. I wanted to quickly paste this thing. I had this link to a thing that my friend here on Twitter may be facing soon. Anyway, so as I was saying, I got this thing on BitcoinMagazine.com. BIS. Central banks may issue digital currencies soon. And this is by Ipek Duman. No penis. Kind of cute, actually. Central banks may begin to issue digital currencies on their own soon, according to the chief of Bank of International Settlements, BIS, Augustin Carstens. BIS, which fosters financial cooperation between international banks, intends to hasten the development of digital currencies by starting a new innovation hub that will help officials research and develop financial technology. Carstens said in an interview with the Financial Times that the BIS hub will be located in Sweden, Singapore, and Hong Kong. According to Carstens, several banks have begun to put in work towards establishing digital currencies, and BIS has been supportive of these initiatives. Banks in Sweden are particularly interested in developing digital currencies of their own. Quote, "It might be that it is sooner than we think that there is a market and we have to create our own digital currencies," Carstens said. This news comes after Facebook unveiled the development of the Libra network, a tech firm with a product utilized by billions of users. Creating its own digital currency may serve as a threat to existing state currencies. Not really, but anyway, continuing. In its latest annual report, which we are going to right-click on just to do it, BIS stated that big tech outfits such as Facebook had the opportunity to become, quote, dominant through the advantages afforded by the data network activities loop, raising competition and data privacy issues. Any potential digital currency established by central banks, like Facebook's Libra, would not be truly decentralized in the same sense as Bitcoin, as the banks would maintain central control. Speaking with the Financial Times, Carstens raised some of the primary questions that central banks have for digital currencies. Quote, "The issue is, how will the currency be used?" he asked. Will there be discovery of information or data that can be used in credit provision, and how will data privacy be protected? A simple way to regulate this is to start with anti-money laundering rules. That is a very immediate and obvious concern. Carstens added that there needs to be regulation to level the playing field between big tech companies and banks, especially considering that the former have large customer bases and access to information and business models the banks may not have access to. Too fucking bad! Overplayed your hand. Used the stick too much. Not enough carrot, too much stick. This is what you get. I mean, come on now. You can't rob people via hyperinflation of fiat currencies of their blood, sweat, and tears on the manufacturing lines and whatnot, and expect that they're going to continue to play along with you. After a while, they get caught up to the game, and they say, you know what, this isn't really working out for me, so you're going to have to get the fuck out of here. You know, I mean, really, I can't put it any more plainly here. You know, the regulation that he's talking about, Mr. Carstens from BIS, what he's talking about, in my opinion anyway, is getting you the fuck out of crypto. You know, anti-money laundering, that means we want to clamp down on your frictionless commerce that you're currently doing and performing right now in cryptocurrencies. We want a cut, is what he's saying. However, think in the not so distant future, these calls for regulation will come to bite these very people in the ass. You know, they want to regulate Facebook, right? And they want to regulate Facebook's cryptocurrency. They want them to halt all development on it and slow down so we can catch up, man. No. The world economy is not going to wait around for you to figure out how to put a fucking toll booth into our digital finance. It's just not going to do it. The world has tasted the fruit of having used cryptocurrencies and invested in them and mined them and developed for them, and they're not going back. I'm sorry, and it's very depressing for some people to lose that kind of control, but it's lost. It's kind of time to face up to that fact. However, and I've stated this before, this opens up a new realm of international competition. This is not kinetic, though. It doesn't require all kinds of military bases all over the place. What it does require is for you to invest in mining. That's what it requires. We're going to be competing on a personal level and on a national level and probably even on a corporate level too. But we are all going to be competing for blocks. And we will be keenly aware of the energy invested in doing so, because we ourselves will probably be doing it, whether it's for the national currency or another. But this whole game of being able to, leverage people because they have to use your currency for the US dollar or whoever had the top of the hegemon pile, that's gone. That is gone. We were talking about in that one article about how Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies render military might and sanctions kind of useless. And it's true. We might use some sort of military force in the future, but it'll be to bomb mining farms. We're going to be saying, no, man, you're competing too hard with us. It's cheaper for us to bomb you, so we're going to bomb you so we can get the fucking blocks. Of course, that'll only work on a certain basis. But I expect it's those kind of pressures, and also these national governments and also intergovernmental organizations that are trying to clamp down and regulate on currencies, that's the kind of route that they'll take. That they'll be trying to hammer down on those big hashing farms because damn well they're not reporting all they're making on their fucking taxes. Don't care. Don't fucking care. I don't. Because the fact of the matter is that all of the commerce and buying the shovels and all that other bullshit that they need to mine with, all of that creates taxable events. All of those transactions are taxed. And that's not going to stop. Now, of course, more of it's going to end up happening in crypto as we see more taxation and more regulation imposed on us. But I think in the longer term, we're going to find out how that doesn't really help us. Trying to enforce embargoes and whatnot, it will actually diminish our ability to compete in these global currencies. And that's not a good thing. We've already seen where Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies actually cause people to invest in alternative forms of generating energy, such as wind and solar, where they're putting solar panels up so they can afford to fucking mine, because it's too expensive to buy the electricity off the grid. That cuts too much into their profits. So they're setting up fucking solar panels. That's investment in alternative energy sources. You see that on a broad enough scale, and you're going to see solar power become very, very cheap, very, very ubiquitous. That's good for everybody. Not just us in the developed world, everybody. Because you can put a fucking solar panel in the middle of fucking Namibia, okay, where there isn't fucking any electricity, and there's no fucking telephone towers or any of that other bullshit. There's no infrastructure out there. They're still herding goats. And all of a sudden you can deploy world-class connectivity out in the middle of fucking nowhere and create the ISP where it wasn't before. Now, creating the ISP and teaching people how to use the internet to interact with the rest of the world and conduct commerce with the rest of the world, the more savvy among them are going to pick it up first. The next in line are going to be learning from their mistakes. And within a very short period of time, you will be seeing economic activity without the same level of cruft that we deal with in the more developed world. Where we have more hands that we have to grease and all that other bullshit. And the development of the infrastructure and replacing the infrastructure is too expensive. And made that way by regulations. But they don't have to deal with that in fucking Namibia or wherever. They don't have to deal with it out there because they don't have all that bullshit. It's fucking drop it down in the middle of nowhere, deploy your fucking solar panels, hook it all up, and off to the races. I got a fucking mining farm out in the middle of nowhere. And we are going to see this. We are going to see it in the not-so-distant future, regardless of whatever happens with the BIS or the fucking IMF or any of those organizations. Regardless of what happens with them, we are going to see microeconomic development that becomes macro. We've already started to see it with regard to Venezuela, where people are interacting with their neighboring nations and facilitating trade of goods and services for cryptocurrencies. Because, I guess electricity is relatively cheap there in Venezuela. And so they burn those fucking hashes, they get them sats, and they talk with their friend in Bolivia, in Colombia, and be like, yo, I need to order some stuff from Amazon, man. And they're like, yeah, what do you got for me? Oh, well, I got some Bitcoin, I got some Litecoin, I got some Monero. What do you want? And none of this, sanctions or any of that crap matters when we're talking about that level of commerce. And that's when that is cheaper than dealing with the existing highly regulated, highly taxed fiat currency systems, when it is cheaper to do it in cryptocurrencies, that's exactly what they're going to do. This game is pretty much over. I don't think that fiat currencies are over. I'm not one of those silly people that says, oh, the dollar's going to go away or paper money's going to go away. No. All you need is 2 or 3 days without electricity in your general vicinity, and you understand what a fantasy that is. The people that actually have physical dollars, they're going to be able to go down to the store and buy shit when nobody else can. When figuring out what your total is with a fucking calculator or some shit like that, instead of the regular till that does it, where you just scan everything, it goes in, you fucking say that's how much you owe. Let's get that Visa card out. Let's get those dollar bills out, yo. The people that have dollar bills are going to be able to continue those commercial transactions when nobody else will. If all you have is Bitcoin and your next door neighbor has $100 bills, you can't give him your $100 bills your Bitcoin for those $100 bills if you don't have electricity. Unless you've got them like maybe on a thumb drive or a paper wallet. But even then, how is he going to believe that this piece of paper actually has the Bitcoin on it? And once the electricity goes up, that you haven't swept the wallet, that you haven't kept a copy of it to, later on sweep it out from under them. They won't be able to trust that. So again, fiat currencies and paper notes, they aren't going to go away. But I think that the underlying value that they represent may in fact change over to a cryptocurrency as opposed to a banknote issued by a central bank. Anyway, I got this other article up here. Not that one. Here we go. This one's on the Foundation for Economic Education, fee.org. Trying to regulate online speech will only make censorship worse. Government regulations are the real threat here, not social media company policies. And this is authored Monday, July 1st, 2019 by Michael Rieger. So yes, penis. Whenever a supposed small government conservative threatens to use, quote, the heavy hand of government, you know something has gone terribly wrong. Yet, Texas Senator Ted Cruz uttered those very words to a Google executive at a congressional hearing on Tuesday, regulating social media censorship. Cruz joins plenty of other conservatives, most notably Senate colleague Josh Hawley, in supporting the regulation of social media companies due to the persistent anti-conservative bias. While Cruz is right to be angry, his threats of government regulation are decidedly unconservative and counterproductive. Government regulations are the real threat here, not social media companies' policies. Civil society and political debate in the United States didn't begin with Facebook, nor would they end if social media disappeared overnight. Before the internet, politically active Americans could still call in to radio shows, attend city council meetings, and write op-eds for their local newspapers, all of which they can still do. When Zuckerberg and his roommates at Harvard first created Facebook, they hardly expected it to grow into an important forum for political discourse. Facebook and other social media sites are at their core social networking services provided by the private sector. Social media is not a utility. No one has Facebook pipes hooked up to their homes or a university where freedom of speech is imperative. As customer-focused service, Facebook's primary responsibility is to provide a climate that is best suited to its users, the majority of whom are more interested in sharing photos of their pets and children than they are in long-term political screeds. Although we do enjoy those, don't we? In fact, Facebook's broad user base is actually responsible for it having a more laissez-faire attitude towards censorship than many of its contemporaries. For example, Bumble, a dating app, banned guns for its users' profiles, claiming it didn't want to mix violence and romance. Facebook has done no such thing, likely held in check by its users' preferences. Furthermore, Facebook has proven to be remarkably responsive to users' concerns. Facebook significantly revamped their privacy and security settings in response to questions following the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and even brought in John Kyle, a former Republican senator from Arizona, to lead an effort to eliminate political bias on the platform. Government regulation threatens freedom. Facebook is held most accountable by its users, or more precisely, the threat that its users may cease to be users. Contrary to popular opinion, Facebook is not a monopoly and is constantly competing with other social media platforms for consumers' time. While platforms like Twitter, Snapchat, and Reddit aren't one-to-one replacements for Facebook's services, an overly censored Facebook risks having its users invest more time in those other spaces. In fact, government regulation of social media poses a far greater danger to freedom of speech than social media companies themselves ever could. While many Americans may find any sort of censorship by Facebook distasteful, the competition Facebook faces makes it far more receptive to its users' demands than a regulatory agency. After all, many regulatory agencies have a troubled history of using their power to settle scores or advance partisan agendas. Those calling for social media regulation would do well to remember that the IRS targeted conservative organizations, and the FBI investigated Fox News journalist James Rosen for simply doing his job. Were the Obama administration still in power, it is unlikely that conservatives would trust the government to regulate online speech, and we have no reason to believe that those in charge of regulating social media will always be amiable to specific political views. The Trump administration won't hold power forever. And that's something to really keep in mind. You know, you might not like Trump, but you might hate the motherfucker that comes after him even more. And having that motherfucker in control of deciding who gets to be a fucking utility and who gets to be a social media outlet, no, thank you. Fuck yourself. Continuing. Finally, the regulation of Facebook opens the door to crony capitalism that could make its dominance over social media even stronger. Rather than weakening Facebook, government regulation of social media could strengthen and entrench it by reducing competition from other social media platforms and making it harder for new platforms to enter the market, including niche social media platforms that cater specifically to conservatives. It's easy to forget that Facebook is only 13 years old, and that it eliminated the quote monopoly of MySpace before it. While many users may bristle at Facebook's power to censor, they are much better served complaining to Facebook or simply logging off than they are handing the power off over the internet to Uncle Sam. God damn right. Yes, sir, Michael Rieger, thank you. Too true. You know, I mean, the fact of the matter is things are better left up to us. It is up to us to decide whether we want to be Facebook users or not. It is up to us to decide whether we want to use the US dollar or not. It is up to us to decide whether we want to use Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency or not. We are not contained. There is no monopoly here anymore. This digital space we call the internet enables magical powers that have never been known by the average person. The ability to speak to people all over the planet in a simple tweet is so fucking powerful, so mind-blowingly so, that people just take it for fucking granted. They have no concept of how much better and how much more representation they individually have now through social media than they have ever enjoyed, ever. I mean, I get likes and tweets from fucking Ice-T, for God's sakes. When has a human being ever had that connection to a quote-unquote celebrity? Never. I mean, you might get a piece of you might send a piece of fan mail to them, and they might actually respond. But that window for response is so fucking tiny, chances are you're getting something that their secretary did for them. I know that there is such correspondence out there. I know it does take place. I'm not saying that don't try or anything like that. But what I am saying is that you're far more likely to be able to interact with those people individually via social media than you ever would have. I mean, if your letter was in the stack of fan mail that they received that week, chances are kind of diminished that they're actually going to be able to respond to you. Not because they don't want to respond to you, not because they don't like you, but because you're under a stack of other motherfuckers that would like that kind of attention too. And no matter how willing the celebrity may be and desirable that they see that kind of interaction being, it's just there's just not that much fucking time in the day, man. I'm sorry. They got to be a celebrity too, you know? They got to do the thing that gets them the celebrity status, and that takes up time, you know? So as much as they would like to interact with you there, you know, but while they don't have enough time to handwrite a two-page response to you, they can type a goddamn 288 character tweet to you, and you feel the same level of interaction. And not only that, other people get to see that you got to interact with this person that you hold in high esteem and consider a celebrity of some sort. Other people can see it. I mean, that's so fucking powerful. You just have no idea, man. If you never lived in a time when you didn't have it, you just have no fucking appreciation for how powerful that is. I mean, it has literally ended wars. It has literally started wars. Again, just awesome power. And it's at your fingertips. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw down for just a brief moment before we close this bad boy out. But I need just a teeny tiny of rest. And I've been wanting to play a little bit of Death Clock tonight. So here it is. Mermaider. Here on Coin Metal. And that was Death Clock with Mermaider. And it is with that I'd like to close out this episode. Thank you very, very much for listening. Certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. Watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. And as far as our last dance is concerned, I haven't picked out anything, of course, because we just don't do that here. But I think I found one. I think this one will work for us. And so here it is, Last Dance Ministry. Let's go. Here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening, and y'all have an excellent evening. Good night.